Well, good afternoon, everyone. I hope you're doing well. My name is Amy Johnson. I'm here from Student Affairs at Carolina, and we are so pleased that you're with us today to participate in our conversation for our November 2025 Mental Health Seminar, which is Everyday Connections for Mental Health. I'm hoping we have some alums from other mental health seminars with us today, which has been a staple program for Carolina since late 2021, launched in connection with our Heals Care Network initiatives. But if you're new to these seminars, we have held these programs each fall and spring semester to continue our campus-wide dialogue about mental health, with a goal to support our Carolina community through the global mental health challenges that we're all experiencing, and to give our faculty, staff, and students tools to support themselves and each other. Each of these seminars is led by a leader, or in today's case, leaders, in our community who can teach and guide us in a conversation through which we'll seek to build resilience, to encourage help-seeking behaviors, and to reduce stigma related to mental health and well-being. Since our start, we have addressed mental health and the intersections it has with various aspects of our lives in these seminars, including faith and spirituality, grief and trauma, relationships, alcohol and drugs, sleep, nutrition, and more. Today's topic is a timely one, particularly as we wrap up our fall semester and move into finals, grade submissions, and the holiday season, to remind us of the important role of our friends, classmates, colleagues, and peers that they play in our lives and in supporting the mental health of our communities. This afternoon, we will share and discuss how peer support is being used locally and around the world to strengthen mental health and overall well-being. We are joined today by our colleagues, Professor Edwin Fisher from the Gilling School of Public Health and Project Director Patrick Tang from the North Carolina Institute of Medicine, to highlight how mutual support fosters social, emotional, personal, vocational, and relational well-being, from everyday encouragement among friends to really structured peer support programs in schools, workplaces, and healthcare. We'll explore practical skills for checking in with others, offering meaningful support, and recognizing when someone may need additional help. We'll also examine population-level approaches that embed peer support into communities and systems to promote connection and mutuality at scale. Our goal today is that you will leave this seminar with actionable insights and tools for giving and receiving peer support in ways that make a difference. Before I introduce our facilitators, I do have a few program notes to help you navigate our seminar today. First of all, the chat function is enabled for participants to communicate with each other and our production team behind the scenes. The Q&A function is also live, which is how we ask participants to submit questions for the presenters so we can help facilitate the conversation and keep track of questions easily. Please know that anonymous questions are allowed, and participants will be able to see all questions, including the unanswered ones, and you can upvote any questions you're interested in. Our facilitator will answer questions at the end of the presentation. And lastly, if you're interested in CLE credit today, the QR code will be displayed at the end of the seminar. So, because our session today highlights the role of friends and colleagues, it's appropriate that we have two good friends and colleagues to us in Student Affairs and great partners in our Heals Care Network initiative to lead this seminar. Dr. Edwin Fisher is a clinical psychologist and professor of health behavior at the UNC Gilling School of Global Public Health. He received his PhD in clinical psychology from Stony Brook University and has focused his career on how social and peer support influences health outcomes. In his former role as the Global Director of Peers for Progress, he advanced peer support in health and mental health initiatives worldwide. And Patrick Tang is the project director at the North Carolina Institute of Medicine. Before joining that team, he was a program manager at Peers for Progress in the Gilling School. And in that role, he led local, national, and international research projects and consulted on mutual and peer support interventions for health and well-being. Patrick earned his Master's of Public Health in Health Behavior from UNC Chapel Hill and his Bachelor of Arts in Molecular Biology from Princeton University. Patrick and Ed, we are so pleased to have you both with us today to lead this topic, and I will turn the Zoom room over to you.
Terrific. Thank you so much for that kind and energetically delivered introduction, Amy. It's very good to see you and to talk with folks about, as you say, this very important area of how we all can help each other and lean on each other. I'm going to share my slides, and I hope they come through now. Um, just one minor correction. I am still the director of Peers for Progress, and Peers for Progress is still um, promoting peer support in a variety of areas of health and mental health and well-being, both here at UNC Chapel Hill and worldwide. So our we've got a lot to cover, and are very excited about getting started. Um, so just want to start with some general background information. One of the things we've learned, Pat and I, over together about a dozen years promoting peer support, is the simple benefits of emotional expression. These are two quotes from women in their 60s who participated in a diabetes management program. I won't read them to you, but as you read through them or glance through them, you can see that they sound not unusual, something that you might expect to hear from a lot of different programs. I think it's worth noting that these were gathered from two women in China. And so we may tend to think of this kind of emotional expression as a Western or a peculiar uh, uh, a, a value in only some cultures. And I think what we have learned through our work with Peers for Progress is the benefits of emotional expression, the benefits of simply talking to somebody who listens to us, cares about us, are universal. So I want to make that point as background to everything we talk about today. Similar background, those of you who remember a freshman or an introductory psychology course will probably remember a picture, something like that on the left here. This was a study done by a psychologist named Harry Harlow, now over 60 years ago. And Harlow was interested in what's the basis for the baby's attachment to the caregiver. And in this particular study, he separated the source of food, the wire surrogate caregiver on the right, and the source of what he called contact comfort, the surrogate caregiver on the left covered with a terry cloth cover. And what he found was that when the monkey was hungry, it went to the milk bottle, but at other times it was much more likely to cling to the terry cloth mother. And so Harlow argued this showed that the desire, the need for contact, what he called contact comfort, is intrinsic. It's built into mammals. We don't have to explain where it comes from. It is simply the way we are. He did a lot of other studies to make a similar point. My favorite is one in which he had monkeys in a room where they could operate a lever to open a window to allow them to look into another room with other monkeys. And he found that even if operating the lever was somewhat effortful, that the monkeys would operate the lever simply in order to be rewarded by the opportunity to look at other monkeys. So this tendency, this need, more than a tendency, this need, this strong drive to connect to others is built into all of us. And this is reflected in lots of human research now. That's the end of the talk about monkeys and other animals for today. Lots of human research showing that human beings are more effective and happier when they have someone they can talk to who cares about them and who help them. And there are literally thousands of studies showing this. And this was dramatized now almost 40 years ago in a very highly regarded paper published in Science, which showed, looking across a variety of studies of death rates and various factors related to death, that the risk of a death associated with social isolation, that is, with the absence of that ability to connect to others, is greater than the risk associated with cigarette smoking. We all know that the risk associated with cigarette smoking is pretty high, and the idea that social isolation is a stronger cause of death mortality than cigarette smoking is really striking. So there are two important lessons from these couple of observations that really cut across everything we'll be talking about today. One is when we're talking about peer support, we're not talking about some frivolous little thing that's nice if you happen to have time. We're talking about something that's built into human beings, is an important part of our makeup. And the second point is it's really important so that if we do it well, if we harness it well, we can have real impacts on health and well-being. It's not just something to throw in if there's extra time to have people chat with each other because it's nice to do. It's something that's important and fundamental and that will pay off if it's done well. Um, so we're going to start now talking about peer support being everywhere. The comment that our colleague, through a lot of work on campus, Wendy Cadence, came up with in a meeting a couple of years ago was that support should be around every corner, whether it's a community organization and public health approaches to peer support, diffusion of peer support skills across many areas of campus life or of organizations. The way we think of this for a student is that for those experiencing challenges, we hope they can find an RA or another student on their floor who has some peer support skills. We hope they might find student groups that have received peer support training. Doesn't have to be a peer support, a group just for peer support. It could be a team that they're participating in or a club in an area of interest. A variety of peers that relate to multiple facets of our identities and experiences, instructors and advisors, channels through across UNC websites, or group chats and forums in which peer support is available. So again, the idea is peer support around every corner. To do that, several years ago, with support from then Provost Bluen, we started the UNC Peer Support Corps, and we worked with the Carolina Peer Support Collaborative, which is a group that's been in existence since 2020, and has representatives from over 50 groups on campus who all share an interest in well-being and peer support and mutuality and similar approach to providing these. And we thought that what we want to do is think in terms of our inputs. So the collaborative and the peer support core provide consultation, program models, etc., which are then designed to provide varied and to encourage the implementation of varied peer and mutual and informal support programs and activities. There's no one right program, there's no one magic bullet. We want to have as many different types of peer support going on campus. And the overarching goal, remember that finding about social isolation. The overarching goal is that no member of the community should be without someone to turn to. We want to reach students, staff, and faculty and achieve individual benefits. This was developed during COVID-19, so addressing some of those concerns as well. So that's the very broad model that we've pursued in trying to promote peer support on campus here at Chapel Hill. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to Pat Tang, who's going to tell us a little bit more about just what we mean by peer support. Pat?
All right, thanks, Ed. So I'm gonna tell you a little bit more about how we think about peer support and our very broad definition of it. There are a lot of definitions of peer support out there, depending on who is delivering it, in what context, for what group of people. Lots of different names for peer support, peer supporters. Um, but this is the one we've been using in our campus work, and one we think is pretty inclusive and um, yeah, that doesn't ruffle any feathers out there. In the broader world of peer support, there's a lot of territoriality, but not here on campus, hopefully. So, the definition we typically use for peer supporters is non-professional, natural helpers who support their peers in managing their health and leading full, satisfying lives. They may have some shared identity and or experience. So when it comes to mental health and behavioral health, there is an expectation that uh, peer supporters do have some lived experience of a mental health struggle. And I think if we're being honest with ourselves, people here at UNC, who hasn't, right? Who doesn't have that shared lived experience? And even if it's not our own struggles with mental health, just having someone close to us, whether that's a family member or a friend, going through that, I think that that counts in a lot of ways. So we also like to say that a peer supporter is like a friend with extra skills. And what we really mean by that is when someone is sitting down and talking to someone to get peer support, they should feel like they're sitting with a friend, right? Who's really listening to them and really cares about what they're talking about. They're not going through a script, although sometimes we train peer supporters with a script to make them feel more comfortable. It helps them kind of drive a conversation along, but it's someone who actually cares, right? They're not someone who it's their job to care, right? So that's how they should feel, and they should have some extra skills to, some additional training, some ways to enhance their communication skills, their problem-solving skills, to be able to be helpful, and also knowledge of resources. I would include that in extra skills as well. Next slide, thanks. So these are four categories of social support, and they apply to peer support as well. Emotional, instrumental, informational, appraisal. I won't go through all of them in detail. Some of them are pretty self-explanatory. Instrumental support, that's like tangible support that people can receive, like picking you up, giving you a ride somewhere, even spotting you a few dollars to get lunch. Tangible acts of support. And appraisal support, that's like affirmations or encouraging people to, reminding people about their strengths, and kind of giving them what they need to overcome challenges. Now, these types of support are really interconnected, and they express themselves differently depending on what culture you live in. So, for example, I'm Chinese, and in my culture, instrumental support is, probably number one. This is how we support each other, friends and family. You just do things for each other to express that you love and care for them without asking most of the time. And for first gen folks who grow up in an American culture, that can seem very controlling, or it can seem like you're not allowing people independence, or to make mistakes on their own, or things like that. But from a Chinese perspective, just doing things for someone you care about shows that you're supporting them and that you care about them. So you have to kind of understand these cultural differences. And another thing is, there's also gender differences that we've seen in research. So for example, oftentimes, depending on the program, people will come to you looking for informational support, right? They'll say it's much easier for someone to come and say, hey, I don't know who to talk to about this. I don't know where to get a treatment, or can you tell me more about this particular topic. So they're asking for information, but once you establish yourself as a source of reliable information and that you're willing to help, then that develops into more of a emotional support and appraisal support. Next slide. Now, one of the things that is a part of emotional support is being there, and we think that that is probably it's the first step, right? It's building rapport, it's being reliable and available, and it's you have to establish that before the other types of support can develop. And this is something that we believe to be universal across cultures. There's a lot of expressions in various languages that reflect, it's not about anything that the other person did or said, but just knowing that they were there if I needed them. So I have a 3-year-old daughter, and one of the books that we received from a friend is called The Rabbit Listened. Y'all on the call might be too young for this book, but parents might know about it. But that book is all about, uh, a person going through some challenges and lots of different animals trying in different ways to be helpful, right? But the one that they really latched onto, the person that really helped, was the rabbit who just listened and was there, didn't give advice, and didn't try to solve their problems. And once they were able to emotionally process, the rabbit was there to help them with the next steps. So just happened to be a rabbit in this cartoon that we've been using for years and years and years. I don't know, maybe inspired by the children's book. Next slide. Now, in addition to active listening and expressing empathy, one of the skills that we hope that peer supporters can develop is being able to effectively problem solve together with another person, and that can be different depending on your relationship. It can mean, you know, being an advice giver. Some people like that, they like receiving advice. Others, they want to explore a lot of different options. But there's a pretty simple 3-step process that we like to train our peer supporters on. And it's really modeled after this friendship bench model, which was pioneered in Zimbabwe. So the 3-step process, very simply, is first accepting and validating the other person's feelings, expressing empathy, making sure that you understand their feelings and the scope of their problem. Ask a lot of questions there, and don't rush into the problem solving step, right? I think one of the things that is most commonly seen amongst people who are helpful and want to be helpful is they really want to get to the problem solving step, right? They have ideas, they have solutions, and before they really even ask 2 or 3 questions, they're ready to give what they think is a solution to the problem. So oftentimes we have to train people to correct that, to not think that they already know the answer to the problem, or to have suggestions, right? First, you need to check with the other person to see if they're ready for that step, right? Are they done venting, right? Sometimes people just want to vent the entire time. They're not even ready to think about problem solving. So you have to give them the space to do that. You can't be in a rush, right, to help them through the problem solving step. And then ask them, is it okay? Do you want to hear some suggestions? Do you want to work on a solution to this problem? Or do you just want to, talk about your feelings, more, whatever you want. Let them kind of lead that. Even though you're providing the framework, let them lead when they're ready to move on. And then the last step is to work together to brainstorm ways that you can approach the problem. Next step. Next slide. So brainstorming solutions, some typical these phrases can kind of help you through it. Generating alternatives to see what's been tried before, what's been effective in the past. And a really easy one is just to say, let's see how many we can come up with. And that really works in like small groups too, where lots of people can kind of offer up different brainstorming solutions. Um, one that really gets people to think pretty hard is how might someone you know and respect handle this problem. So maybe stepping out of their own shoes and their own emotions and kind of seeing it from a different perspective. Um, so I'll let you read through some of these other ones, but sometimes it's not a script, but these are prompts to help us through brainstorming. And lastly, on that last one, offering people to role play or to practice what they might do or to say can be really helpful. And I don't know if people like the rehearsal on HBO, but it's about role playing, it's about practice to help us, make us feel comfortable. Next slide. So, peer support, we think it's really helpful through the entire continuum of mental health challenges. Um, Oftentimes, people don't seek out mental health supports until it gets to a certain point where they can't manage it on their own. But I just want to remind people to kind of explore or examine the ways in your daily life that you are giving and receiving peer support, right? And that's mostly just daily hassles, annoyances, traffic, like th things that are very low on the uh, continuum of severity. But then things that are maybe more persistent, right? Things that are, you're a class that you're struggling with this semester. That would be a common challenge. Maybe, and then going into some, deeper persistent problems, maybe difficulty connecting with making friends on campus, right? Finding where you belong, and or maybe feeling a little lost, with your concentration or in your department, things that are maybe more long lasting. And then, even when it comes to very serious, depression and anxiety, serious mental health problems, we still think that peer supporters are really helpful people to talk to. And we go to different types of people for different types of peer support, right? We'll go to a certain type of person to get support for schoolwork, for relationships, et cetera. So it's good to have a variety of supports. Um, and I think one thing is, people who come into peer support wanting to be a peer supporter, they're often people who have been helped in the past, and they want to give back. So there's this understanding that, um, when you fall down, there's someone there to help you tomorrow as well. Next slide. I think this is my last one before handing it back to Ed. So everything I've talked about, kind of feeds into what we've been trying to do on campus to promote peer support, not as a concrete service, not as well, partly creating people who have a basic amount of training to deliver peer support, who can go into various spaces on campus and kind of spread peer support, but not as a concrete service, more as kind of a change in orientation, or a change in culture, and promoting a culture of care and mutuality on campus. So the key drivers are, of course, the peer support core, and then to network with various offices and groups on campus, the peer support collaborative. So we've been promoting a variety of different activities, services, and encouraging existing groups to, emphasize peer support more in their activities. All right, I'll send it back to you, Ed.
Great. Thanks, Pat. So we want to talk a little bit more in detail about the programs that we've developed, as Pat just described, a very broad tapestry, we hope, of programs. Um, the original organizational base for this came through, as mentioned earlier, the support from the Office of the Provost, and then we were able to get support from the Division of Academic Affairs of the UNC system, and attention from senior leadership, Dr. Johnson and others. throughout the work that we've done on campus. The UNC Peer Support Corps has provided resources, training, consultation, trying to promote as many different kinds of peer support activities on campus as possible. And as mentioned, the Carolina Peer Support Collaborative since April of 2020 has really been trying to help groups across campus develop and share peer support activities. You see at the bottom of this slide a quotation. The quotations in the next rest of the slides come from interviews we did a couple of years ago with 17 key informants among administrators and staff and students. One of the things that the Peer Support Corps has done is provide a variety of resources on specific things, seeking support in challenging times. For example, we've had several traumas on campus, and we've put out information about how people can be supportive to each other in those challenging times. You see a list of other titles here, and these are all available on the Peers for Progress website, which is just peersforprogress.org, and there's also a link there in the slides. I know we're making a copy of this talk, and so the talk will be available and people can go through it and pull up some of these resources. Pat developed a brief online peer support skills course, which includes about 45 minutes to give people the skills they need to just be, as we said a few minutes ago, like a friend with special skills. This is not going to train people to do an elaborate peer support intervention, but gives anybody who is interested some special skills for providing peer support. And I'm going to turn it back to Pat for the next few. Pat?
Sure, thanks, Ed. And just going on to highlight some other specific activities. One student-led organization that popped up starting before COVID and then really kind of hit its stride during COVID is peer-to-peer, and we work very closely with the founders of that group and help them develop this student organization. Um, so they were matching. I think they had probably 20 peer responders, I think is how they called them, to match up with people who were seeking support. They had an intake process, and they were really trying to develop those peer relationships. Over time. It was they were getting some pretty good responses. It's totally free, no commitment, and it's a good way for folks to connect with. They could read their bios. They were real people. It was a great service, and they have been trying to kind of expand this model to see if any other UNC schools are interested in developing something similar. So they kind of have like step by step for creating something similar. The Listen program is a live chat program that we had made available for UNC, the UNC community. So it was staffed by trained volunteers. It was up for about 50 hours a week during the semesters, fall and spring, and on the summer. And it was accessible through the Heals Care Network and the CAPS websites. Now, the difference with peer-to-peer is this was immediate connection. It was behind a screen, didn't know exactly who you were talking to. Sometimes people were like, is this a real human? Is this a chat bot? So they didn't quite know. They were just, clicked a few disclaimers and they were in talking to somebody. But yeah, there was someone who was just on call, ready to answer questions and talk to people. And these could be, 5-minute conversations. They could be an hour and a half chat conversations, on their phone or computer. So immediate connection, no wait. And so we, over the course of several years, we trained and mobilized 92 student volunteers, probably around 25 per semester at a time. We have representation from all of the high priority groups that we had pre-identified on campus. And they had received training. So over the course of the semester, they had 16 hours of training. The peer support skills and program procedures, that was under 4 hours. Typically, early in the semester or before the semester began. And then we also made a requirement for them to complete mental health first aid training, which is about 8 hours, and then an optional high priority group training, which can vary a lot. And the time commitment for volunteers was 3 to 4 hours per week, which is not a lot. It was very flexible, really flexible hours that you can pick your own times to volunteer. And because this was, during COVID, it was all virtual except for maybe a couple of in-person events. So next, I want to highlight our mini grant project, which we're really proud of, just because of the variety of projects that we were able to fund and to encourage and to refine across campus. So over the course of 2.5, 3 years, we supported 57 projects across campus, and awards ranging from $200 all the way up to $5,000. Yeah, it was really great to see the enthusiasm from people across campus, and it was people who are connected, through the peer support collaborative, but also folks that we had never engaged with before who had a great idea, who weren't in student services or well-being or mental health, and they just had a great idea for their group or their department, and they shot us an application. It was great. So we really welcomed everyone in the UNC Chapel Hill community to apply, students, faculty, and staff. We explicitly said you don't have to be working in these spaces. Anyone can lead a small project, right? So, one thing we did discourage though was we didn't want folks to, get to apply for just a one-off event. We really wanted to be kind of integrated into a larger plan of integrating peer support into their groups and activities. And we would enhance their activities, their ideas, after they sent their initial applications. Next slide. So I think one thing that really helped us with the our process was, sometimes people just said they wanted to meet before they apply. Some people, we gave them feedback on their application to help them be more successful. We respond to them really quickly. Sorry, Ed, are these auto advancing?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll just keep you where you want to be.
I'm sorry about that. Yeah, these were built in from a different slide deck. They're auto advancing. But we had an application success rate of 85% because we really wanted them to succeed. So we kind of refined their applications. And then we provided training support, program development support throughout the process. So now let's breeze through some of these examples just to show you the variety of what we did. The first one that we're really proud of is a collaboration amongst the Student Veterans of America, the English and Comp Lit Department, and the formerly Carolina Veterans Resource Center, which is now Military Student Success, I believe. I think I might be getting that a little bit wrong. So they brought in a guest speaker for the series of events. They gave lectures. They had book signings. They had a lunch set up. So it was like probably like 4 or 5 different events with this speaker, and yeah, anchored around this best-selling author. And this was one of several grants that we had given to the military affiliated community. There are about 6 events for this one, engaged approximately 150 different people. Next slide. Another one that we're really proud of is this campus-wide training, Global Zone training. I don't know if folks here have heard about it, but this was definitely the newest one and modeled on the in the spirit of Safe Zone and Green Zone and Haven trainings. But this is to help everyone better understand the experiences of international students and scholars, and to, yeah, help the over 3,500 international students and scholars feel more at home on campus. So this was launched in fall of 2024. I was very proud to be part of their pilot process. This is a great training. I encourage you all to go sign up for it if you get a chance. Um, so this one came from the Adams School of Dentistry, supporting a Women in Science and Healthcare support pod. So in the field of dentistry, female researchers, female dentists, it's been a bit of a challenge, connecting with each other, feeling like they're maybe left out in a lot of ways, a lot of spaces. So this was a series of three events held during lunch to help people from across the school, women from across the school, connect with each other. So this was some feedback that they had given about the community that they were building in the School of Dentistry. We supported a lot of work from the Postdoc Alliance. We loved when we got an application from them. They had lots of great activities, and we knew that they were really, really, really active from all of their different subcommittees. So we had funded 7 events in total for them, bringing together postdocs, and it could be casual socializings, community outreach, volunteer efforts that they were doing, and really I think, underserved part of our campus community. This one I wanted to highlight because it came in from off-campus student life and connecting students with our Chapel Hill communities, which we thought was great. And this was a series of events, art-related events, with the help of a local artist. And the goal was to foster connections between community students and Chapel Hill and Carrboro residents. So a reason for students to leave their dorm rooms at night and to do something fun and creative. And the last one we're highlighting is an idea that came from an undergraduate student who wanted to put up hammocks, across campus. Didn't really pan out that way, but we got in touch with Carolina Housing, and they already had some plans that could be helped. But I think it was even an improvement on the hammocks, but funded a bunch of these community spaces, and the gliders that you might see, in your residence halls. Super popular, and getting a lot of use during the good weather months. So happy that it started in one place and then it was really executed in Carolina Housing. Just some feedback that we got from mini grant recipients. I think a lot of the smaller organizations, it only takes a couple of $100 to, really give them the energy to do activities that they want to do. So yeah, it was a real injection for smaller groups on campus, and made them kind of think about their work in a different way. So from the evaluation that we collected, we found that it was increasing connection within groups, camaraderie, and strengthening the connections in across campus. So for us, this was, these were relatively small grants, and it was a really low risk way to experiment with supporting different peer support across campus. All right, next slide.
So,
And yeah,
yeah, I'm
anything you
sorry,
want
go
to
ahead,
add?
Pat.
Yeah, so the last thing I wanted to highlight was something that we are trying to encourage more communication between UNC system schools. So we had some great opportunities at the behavioral health convenings organized by the UNC system office to connect with other people interested in peer support at UNC system schools. There's a lot of great organizations that we could be learning from here at Chapel Hill. We're not the only ones doing this. We're not the first ones doing this. So we said, let's share amongst each other and get some resources shared. So we created a online toolkit and hosted through the Peers for Progress website, and we're collecting resources from other UNC system schools. Really, any resource related to peer support are welcomed. So, next slide is just an example of where we have resources submitted from. Some good representation from across the state, and you can go there to the website and see if there's uh, tools that might be helpful to you. All right, back to you, Ed.
So, thanks, Pat. I just want to emphasize the mini grants really exemplify as much as anything we've done the what we've tried to emphasize, which is a broad community approach to promoting peer support in as many little nooks and crannies in as many ways as possible. Going back to that quote from our friend Wendy Cadens, we want peer support to be around every corner. I'm going to roll pretty quickly through some findings from the interviews that I mentioned with key informants of articulating aspects of the program. So, in terms of informal mutual support activities, especially during COVID, a lot of pods were developed in different schools and groups on campus. And, for broad groups and also for more specific groups like the Affinity Space for Black Male Business Students. There was a student-run mental health club that made UNC feel less cutthroat and competitive. People talked about a coworker and I forming a bond, which resulted in weekly mental health check-ins. I think this emphasizes also the what we mentioned at the outset, that the peer support work on campus was not only for students, it was also for staff and faculty. Initiatives within schools, several schools started wellness coaches in human resources. In one school, they developed a buddy system. Uh, Overall, the goal that everybody has someone they can turn to. I thought this was interestingly expressed in one quotation where the person giving the interview said, in all honesty, people aren't meeting all the times with each other, but that they know they have a community of people that that you can lean into when you need to. And that's in some respects really the bottom line of peer support, that there's somebody you can turn to when you need to. Pat talked earlier about mutuality, and Chancellor Guskowitz a few years ago now talked about the Heals Care Network, peer counseling and support groups, mental health first aid training, creating a culture of care and compassion on campus. I know Dr. Johnson has been very interested in promoting that culture of care and compassion. And I think that's really an important dimension of all of this. Uh, 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 People said that student affairs has really made peer support a major root of what student affairs has tried to promote. This is exemplified in the Heals Care Network. This is a slide from the Heals Care Network as I visited it this morning. And you can see that one of the major topics on the Heals Care Network, in addition to training, is peer support. Uh, Numerous programs and individual programs developed on campus. One in the School of Pharmacy for transition to doctoral studies. In the School of Nursing, pods developed during COVID ended up being integrated into the school's wellness center. Increased attention to high priority groups. Pat mentioned BIPOC, veterans, first gen, LGBTQ, about a dozen high priority groups we've identified as being groups that we wanted to make sure we were paying attention to. These two quotes talk about reaching folks who are American Indians and Asian Americans. Uh, Variety of outcomes that have been observed. Uh, Observation that support is generally preferred. As one person put it, when you have a good source of peer support in your life, you're never alone. In a sense, that's utterly circular, but it's also really important. The variety of outcomes, the idea that sometimes the point is the processing, just being heard, feeling that somebody is listening to you is as important as any part of the peer support. Uh, One person talked about the best thing I've done for myself. I'd been feeling alone and lost, and then I got peer support, and that really made a difference. One Listen volunteer talked about how they contacted somebody who had mentioned they were having a problem with their roommate, and they counseled them on helping uh, deal with the problem with their roommate. Um, the program for transition to doctoral studies, students said felt alone and afraid, but my peer mentor was willing to be there for me. I trusted and felt that I could connect with somebody, and I still talk to my peer mentor. So the um, helping people who are in the midst of struggling, perhaps with an initial adjustment. Here's another similar one for the transition to doctoral programs. A person went from a 2.4 GPA to realizing they wanted to get some help and now getting all A's and a sense of understanding that I had never before experienced from an academic profession. So the specific value of a peer supporter, a friend with extra skills, the benefits of providing peer support, one likened it to a dopamine rush, and also the importance of combating stigma. People find a safe space to share with their peers, and that really helps normalize the experiences they're having. Overall contributions to the university and the system. One key informant said that they felt that a lot more students were graduating, which is a good thing, of course, and that the work had really improved their experience at UNC. Another key informant said they just saw it as an overall important part of overall of the constellation of resources that we offer. So we want to close with what you can do about it. If you're interested in starting some kind of peer support, we recommend don't think of it as a program, think of it as activity, and really don't focus on content, but focus just on connecting. You can start with just a number of friends or colleagues with a common interest. Over the course of the years, we've had pods for pet lovers, pods for cat lovers, pods for graduate students with young children. All sorts of identities have helped people get together and realize things they had in common and develop a pod. Um, Once connecting starts, once you start meeting or getting together, then the recognition of opportunities and needs will emerge. Your conversations will identify, hey, we're all graduate students with young children. How could we pool our resources and pool some resources around childcare activity? There are lots of resources through peersforprogress.org, different roles and formats from trained peer leaders to mutual support groups. Don't be bashful. Um, $200 to $300 from a department chair, as in our mini grants, is not a lot of money, but it can do a lot to energize a program. So ask people who are in a position to perhaps find a few extra $100 to see if they could make that available to you. Don't make the organization more complicated than it needs to be. Keep the focus on the process, not the rules and regulations. Uh, Reach out to people, encourage others to get involved, but also recognize that not everybody you reach out to is going to become an active member, but you've done them a service simply by helping them realize that I may not use it, but I know it's there. Um, and in dealing with complex problems, arrange backup through student services, through well-being resources and student services, through CAPS, through Peers for Progress, through feel free to contact me. But backup is important in dealing with complex problems. If you're interested in developing more of a peer support program like peer-to-peer or Listen, think through carefully what the goals, objectives, the intended audience are. There's a tendency to go into this thinking very, very broadly, which leads programs then to be at risk for being pretty amorphous. And it's really helpful to have clear ideas. For instance, the Listen program really focused on instant access. The peer-to-peer program focused on giving people a lot of information about who the peer volunteers were and helping people choose somebody that would fit their needs. So different programs, different emphases, different strengths. We don't need to find the one best program. We need to have lots of good ones. Identify what the peers will provide. Is it support, availability, information, help in problem solving, referral? Um, but I would emphasize backup. If you're going to be training people to provide help for other people, you need to have some backup, somebody with some more professional qualifications who is able to advise on how to handle more complicated problems that may emerge. And then there are a lot of resources here on campus. Peers for Progress, our website, the toolkit that Pat mentioned, the program development guide that Peers for Progress developed a number of years ago, but it's still very timely. And it's a very detailed guide for developing a peer support program, everything from what your objectives are to how to evaluate it. And if you'd like to share, if you're in a position where you want to try to be promoting this kind of work in your backyard on campus, consider joining the Carolina Peer Support Collaborative. And you can do that by just emailing me and telling me that you'd like to join the collaborative, and we'd be glad to put you in touch. I want to close by a little bit of a broader reflecting on what this all is, some big thoughts. Uh, if you think about it, a model that underlies most of our work in healthcare and human services is that a highly trained few people provide services for the rest of us. And of course, those services are good, they're valued, they've stayed around and persisted because they're good and valued. They're very important to places like universities, businesses, communities, healthcare systems, etc. But if we think about it, peer support sort of blows that model open because what peer support says is that non-professionals, people who are just like friends with extra skills, can add real value to this process. And that explodes things a little bit. It can cause some tension, some concerns, but it also provides, I think, creative growth in our human services and healthcare systems. A few years ago, we were talking about this with some folks, and we were saying, well, there's a tendency in the field for to make peer supporters look more like professionals. And I would encourage those of us who are professionals to think of the 180 degrees from that. To what extent might it be good in many situations for professionals to look more like peer supporters? And with that, Dr. Johnson, I'm going to turn it back to you. And thank you for everybody for your time and attention. And I hope we have some provocative questions now.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, Ed and Pat, so much for a really engaging presentation and opportunities for us to plug in and see how, as we often talk about in the Heals Care Network, we all have a role to play and a contribution to make. So this is wonderful. Folks, please remember to drop your questions in the Q&A, and that way we can track them, know what's answered and not answered. People can upvote. And remember, you can submit anonymous questions. So just to get us warmed up while people are still thinking of questions, the both of you obviously have tremendous expertise in this field. I am mindful that we have probably students and maybe some colleagues who are really stimulated by this conversation and think, I think I might be interested in public health as a career path and focusing in on mutual support and peer support, perhaps as a specific area of interest. Would you talk just a little bit about how you sort of got into this field? What was it that when you were early on in your education and your careers that really sung to you about this? And if there's any advice that you have for, again, students wanting to enter, students wanting to pursue this degree, wanting to enter the field, or colleagues maybe making a career change or wanting to add an additional degree.
Let me start, and Pat can speak to the experience of somebody who completed our MPH program here at UNC. Um, I can literally point to a specific moment when my head got turned around and I got interested in social support. I was doing research on self-control in weight management 40 years ago, and I was running the 12-month follow-up of a weight management program that had taught the participants our model for how they could control their urges, they could control their weight management. And two women came early for the follow-up, and that I heard the following conversation. The first woman said, "How'd you do?" The second woman said, "Oh, I did pretty well. I lost about 15 pounds, and I've been able to keep most of it off, and I feel really good." "Oh, how did you do?" "Well, I also lost about 14, 15 pounds, and then I regained it all, and I was pretty bothered by that, so I joined Weight Watchers." And now I've been going to Weight Watchers and I've lost it all again. And the first woman said, "Oh, that must have disappointed you that you had to join Weight Watchers. Keep in mind, I'm listening to this. This woman was supposed to have learned how she could control her own behavior for the rest of her life." And the woman answered, she said, "Well, I thought about it and I figured out some people have their book clubs, some people have their garden clubs. I have my Weight Watchers." And I was just struck by the total comfort with which she just recognized that it takes a village for her included Weight Watchers as a way of maintaining her objective of managing her weight. And I went to my research team the next morning and I said, "Folks, we got to talk about social support." And that's been the focus of most of my career since then. And peer support and social support have not disappointed. There's just tremendous opportunities in this field. I've come at it as a clinical psychologist. Um, Clinical psychology is a great career because it equips you to be a psychotherapist, but it also equips you to do all sorts of other things in the area of human services and psychological services. So that's my story. Pat?
Um, so in a different life, I might have been a psychologist like Ed. I had was very interested in that, going into college, and I was directed into chemical engineering instead because it was um, more stable or, had better career prospects, and yeah, I mean, of course, there was stigma, against, mental health. Um, so it was just not something I was encouraged to do. And I didn't really get a chance to explore that until very late, in post-college. Post-college. I didn't take a single psychology course in college. So It was really in the between after graduation and then going into my master's program that I really became interested in public health and in social factors that influence health, right? And when it comes to social factors that influence health, peer support was such a growing field, right? We just recognized that it was um, there's a lot of areas that needed development. There are a lot of areas that were missing key um, evidence and a lot of distrust, of peer support. So it was an area that it was very exciting. When I was first getting into it and had an opportunity very early on with Ed to do a summer practicum in China, which was a great way to explore global mental health or global health. That was a diabetes project, but seeing how peer support could be integrated into a Chinese medical system that was clinical and community. So that was really interesting, and yeah, that's how I got started.
That's fantastic. One of the things that I often hear from participants after is that one of their favorite parts was hearing from folks how they got interested in the field, and a reminder that there is no one way to get into any particular discipline, and that there are lots of different channels then that you can take your sort of career path. So I think especially for our students, that's often helpful to hear. So thank you both for your willingness to share that. An interesting question that was submitted in advance. What would you
Hmm.
suggest for someone who wants to support a friend who doesn't want help or rejects support? Is there an artful way to handle that?
So I think go back to being there. So support can be playing ping pong together.
Mhm, mhm.
Support can be going for lunch together.
Right.
If you're concerned that a friend is having difficulties and you really think they do need to have a chat, certainly one can say, I just want you to know that I'm here for you if ever you want to talk about any of this stuff. Um, so very low demand, uh, low key, but either through actions or through being explicit, just communicating that you're there for the person. And I think there were a couple quotes that we shared that illustrated that people are sensitive to when people are there for them, even if it's not acknowledged through explicit conversations or actions.
Right.
Pat, you probably have a suggestion on that. It's a good one.
Yeah, no, I love that, and just keeping it to no demands on the other person. When they're ready, they'll come to you, right? So you just want to make sure that you're reading. If they respond, you're ready to help, right? That means uh, don't. What one thing I like to say is, don't leave their messages unread. If they sent you a text message, asking for something or just saying, even if it doesn't require a response, right? Respond to them. That might those little things can be the signal that people latch onto to say, oh yeah, they always respond to me. I always know that they're there. Um, yeah, so just echoing what Ed said.
Yeah, just picking up on the example of voicemails, Pat and I were absolutely blown away about 5 or 6 years ago talking. We wrote a couple of papers with a group at Rutgers that is doing telephone support for veterans and first responders.
Mm,
And uh, they shared this anecdote that just, you can never forget it once you hear it, which was that somebody left a message on their voicemail, on the system's voicemail, that said, you may have thought that I never received or paid attention to all those voicemails that you left me. But those voicemails, I listened to every one. And uh, you were the only one who was consistent in responding. And I want you to know that those voicemails resulted in one less dead Marine. And you hear something like that. And uh, so I think it's really important that the expression that may seem unheard, uh, nevertheless is heard. People know when people are there for them. And just one more, I think this point is so important, Amy. A wonderful former doctoral student of ours, Sarah Cowett, and she's now an associate professor in family medicine here. Sarah did a study interviewing peer supporters in the United Kingdom, Chicago, and Eastern North Carolina, dealing with middle class English folks, with Latinos in Chicago, and with African Americans in Eastern North Carolina. And you remember Pat showed the types of peer support: informational, emotional, appraisal, instrumental. And what she found was that the peer supporters described how frequently their support started being instrumental or informational. I don't want anybody to, ask me to talk about all my feelings, but if they could answer a few questions, that'd be great. Frequently, peer support started there, but after a couple of months, people were talking very much about their emotions and their feelings and had developed a strong attachment. So frequently, emotional support doesn't start with a cold call saying, "Tell me all about your feelings." It may start with somebody helping you figure out where you can buy a winter coat if you're a low-income person living in Chicago, and then grows into other things.
Appreciate that so much. Excuse me, I'm losing my voice today. Um, I think this is an important question that sort of goes to the other end of the spectrum a bit. And I think you touched upon it perhaps in your remarks earlier, but I wonder if you might talk more about it. So, and I hear this often from students that they offer peer support and then suddenly get in over their head a little bit. So, what are signs that you might be crossing into amateur therapy? So that you can identify before you get there and realize, woof, I'm suddenly out of my depth.
So, uh, one obvious sign is what you just said. I'm feeling like I'm not sure how to deal with this. Um, One of the things you learn in training to be a therapist is to pay attention to your own feelings. And if you're feeling confused, if you're feeling anxious for the person, then you're probably getting into areas that you're not uh, equipped to. So that's why we've emphasized, and we emphasize this in all of our work, um, that backup is really important. People become peer supporters because they're can-do kind of people. They want to fix things. They're not going to leave somebody hanging. They're not going to say, "Well, I'm sorry, I can't help you there." They're going
Yeah.
to come up with something. If they have backup, they will use the backup to come up with something that's helpful. And peer support can be a great, we all have, or maybe some of the students on the call haven't had this wonderful experience of U.S. healthcare. But those of us who are older have had the experience of having to take a day off from work to wait for a doctor to call us back or things like that. So the peer supporter, if the peer supporter has backup, not only can they get some help, but if the person they're working with has a question, they have somebody that they can get prompt response from and get back to the person with an answer to their question within a few hours or a day. So backup, 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 and training the peer supporters to use when you're recruiting peer supporters, you're recruiting people who are responsible, and they'll use the backup if they have it. And so I would say that if I were just freelancing and I was trying to be helpful to a friend on campus, and we want people to feel free that they can do that, I would, if things got where my friend is really having some problems that I don't know what to do with, I would think of the care report through the dean's office as one resource. I would think of the Heals Care Network as a second resource. And I would think I would just go to CAPS and get the no wait service and say, I've got a friend who's in problems. CAPS is not going to contact your friend without your friend's permission, but they can help you deal with your friend as effectively as you can, and you will benefit from having somebody at CAPS help you deal with the friend that needs some help.
That's really useful. And the Dean of Students office, you're absolutely right. The CAPS is not going to go out and solicit the other individual, but the Dean of Students, if you submit a care referral, absolutely will reach out and connect, and then that can
Right.
be another
Yeah.
resource. So fair game, if I'm understanding you, to, acknowledge in the moment that I feel like this has gone beyond the scope. I want to help, and let me phone an expert or phone a friend. That's not leaving somebody hanging, right? That's a
Right.
responsible way to say, I need to connect with my backup.
Yes, exactly, Amy. I didn't say that, but you did, and I think it's really important. And the other thing is then follow up.
Yes.
You know, I'm going to talk to my friend or I'm going to talk to my supervisor or whatever, the head of our program, and I will get back to you.
Yes.
The I will get back to you is as important as any part of the communication.
Right. Yeah, and following through on that, I'll get back to you.
Yeah.
Patrick, did you have anything to offer there? I didn't know if I stepped on you.
No, no, you didn't. I think one thing to recognize with folks, students who are wanting to do peer support, yeah, they are maybe interested in going into a helping profession, maybe interested in doing counseling. I've had folks who came through the list of volunteers who ended up going to psychology programs or counseling programs. So, yeah, it is a way for them to test whether this is right for them, right? And I obviously I don't want to see it through the lens of their experimenting on their peers on campus. But I mean they're practicing their skills and they're already good at it, right? So the thing is just to make sure that when you have to make sure that they know where the guardrails are. They know the warning signs to look out for, and if they spot it, where to direct the issue to. So we always, peer support services need to advertise themselves not as crisis services, not as critical supports. And if your conversation starts in an area that's very manageable, but then goes to an area that isn't, you have to recognize that and say, okay, I'll stay on the line with you, but really we should, this is, over my head. I think here are some folks that would be able to help you better. And being able to ask those tough questions, right? Sometimes people might not know. They're like, yeah, this might be a little inappropriate, or this, I'm crossing a line here. They have to feel comfortable asking that question to be like, okay, is this really is this the problem that we're talking about? And if that's the case, I think this is out of my scope.
Appreciate that. We have a question in the chat for Patrick. I don't know, Patrick, if you can see it or if everyone has their chat open. So just to help, I'll read it. It says, I used to be a medical student before in China and was interested in mental health. I am a second year MPH student now. I'm curious about what you said about the combining of peer support and clinical services. Could you elaborate on it a bit more?
Sure. Yeah. I think in China, as in a lot of places, there are provider shortages, and there's need for building trust with patient communities and um, helping people with long-term of lifestyle changes. So, the activities around diabetes peer support in China were really organized around clinics and community health centers, often with the leadership of a tertiary hospital with professional, experts in endocrinology. So they had that clinical expertise and backup. And then they usually had nurses, public health nurses, community health center leaders, district health directors. Those would be the people organizing and running the peer support programs. So we had assisted with the trainings, which sometimes is a challenge, trying to train um, Chinese peer supporters on kind of our philosophy of peer support. There are a lot of cultural differences, but thankfully we had myself and another Mandarin speaker and very familiar who were able to kind of translate these concepts into a Chinese cultural setting. But there were some areas where we were like, I don't think what we're instructing and what we're trying to teach, I don't think the system there and the culture and the philosophy are quite where we are yet, right? So there were definitely some compromises when it comes to um, how peer support was implemented in China versus what we tried to teach them.
Do here.
Yeah.
Appreciate that. Thank you for that question. I think we might have time for one more question if somebody wants to plug it into the chat. While we wait for that potentially, Ed and Pat, one of the things that folks often like and appreciate, and this may be something that you need to follow up with us on, but is if folks wanted to read more about peer support, are there books that you would recommend? Are there particular journals that tend to share current research on peer support that folks might look into? You've been very kind to share several studies with us sort of at a high level here in this presentation. But if folks wanted to read more, see what the current research is assessing, are there places that you would recommend we go?
So, first of all, I'd recommend peersforprogress.org.
Okay.
That's our website, and there's a lot of information on the website. Um, I'd be happy to share. Um, uh, this is very specific, but we have a PubMed search syntax for about 20 terms that are related to peer support, lay health worker, community health worker, navigator, etc. I'd be glad to send that to anybody who wants it. And that's maybe in the time we have left, I can go ahead and put it in the chat. Um, and just generally, people, please feel free to email me, and I'm happy to consult with folks on learning more about peer support. And I'll get that syntax and put it in the chat along with my email address while you're finishing up, Amy.
Okay, wonderful. Appreciate that. Thank you both very much. And Sarah has placed the Peers for Progress website. So I know you'd shared that earlier, and that's on the slides, which will be available on our Heals Care Network page where we have our mental health seminars recording so that you can review those later. So I think we have exhausted our questions. So I would just ask, would everyone in the room please help me thank Ed Fisher and Patrick Tang for their terrific expertise and sharing this what great topic with us today. Just gets right at the heart of I think who we are as a Carolina community, and certainly the efforts that we have engaged in through Peers for Progress and the Heals Care Network. So thank you for all of your work and your expertise today. So we will be including a final couple of slides here with some follow-up information, our Heals Care Network website, as well as our QR code. Oh, and Ed has put the chain in the chat for those of you who don't have that open, as well as his email address. So thank you very much for that. Folks, this is our last mental health seminar of 2025. So I hope that it has been valuable. I wish everyone a successful end of the semester, a very happy holiday season, and we will look forward to seeing you in 2026. Also, a special shout out and thank you to our intrepid Sarah Stallman, who is our secret weapon and the thing that makes the person who makes all of the things behind the scenes and often in front of the scenes on our mental health initiatives go. So if you don't have a Sarah Stallman in your life, you need to get one. But thank you, everybody. Happy holidays. And again, we'll look forward to seeing you in the new year with new seminars. Take good care.